Oh hey, Professor 3D Dave here. In this video, we're going to build that cartoon hand using only two sub-D commands. The first one is a box, and all the other commands will just be extrusions with a couple of scales, moves, and rotates. That's it! Let's go! Okay, here's the overall character. This is, if you're curious, a style called rubber hose, which began in the 1920s and 30s. Of course, we're just going to focus on that glove. So let's zoom out. So here's two examples of hands. The one on the left is just the basic wrist, and the one on the right has that cuff that we will be building. And it's kind of fun, if you hit the tab key, just to see how simple it really is, kind of under the hood. So before we get started, I'd like to cover the strategy and commands. So we're just going to use a handful of just two simple commands. We're making a primitive to start off with, and then it'll be a series of extrusions. Now the strategy here is all about the repetition. We're going to be grabbing one face at a time and then extruding. Then we'll be either scaling, moving, or rotating, or all three to get it into the correct position, and then repeat that move. Don't worry, it'll be quick and fun. So let's come down to the workspace, and I'm going to use the sub-D toolbar and go over to get a basic box. Now I want the X count to be 3, the Y count to be 3, and the Z count to be 1. We're going to make this a flat hand. Okay, we'll just draw the hand anywhere is fine. Kind of get it centered though. We're going to go up. And there's our basic 3x3x1 box. Okay, I'm going to shrink this down a little bit, give ourselves more room to work. So the process is pretty straightforward, as I said. So we can select the whole sub-D at once, like I just did, by clicking anywhere. But this is going to require some finesse. We're going to select what's called sub-objects. There are three kinds. There is the vertex. You have to use Control and Shift, and that's editable, and it can move things around and undo that. We also have the edge. That can be moved, scales, or rotated. There we go. See how it looks. Control Z to undo. Or the face. So vertex, edge, and face. Control Shift picks the face. And we're ready for our first operation, which is an extrude. Now I'm going to pull these out roughly in a cube form. That keeps it relatively round inside. So after the first extrusion, we want to have the hand curling a little bit. So we're using the move, which is the blue arrow. And then I'm going to rotate just a bit. And that's the red arc. Now notice how it gets a little bit wider. So we may want to scale it in just a little bit. So I'm using that scale there. Okay. If you're doing this and following along, my gumball is automatically rotated to align with the face. Let me show you where that setting is. So that's align to object. So now it sticks with the face as opposed to realigning to the construction plane. Next, extrusion. I'm going to keep it kind of short. And as I said, we're going to do a little rotate. That was a move. And I'm going to have this basically 3 segments. We'll align it. So one more. Bring it over. Arc to rotate. Is that still square? All right, let's see how that first finger looks. Not too bad. Okay, I also like to do these one at a time because if they look too similar or symmetrical, it's not going to be an organic shape. So we'll just keep moving on one by one. That's the way it goes. So this can come out a little bit farther. It's the middle finger. So that was an extrude. Here's a rotate. I'm going to pull it out a bit. Maybe a little more rotate. And maybe scale it in a bit. Okay, let's keep going. Again, make this one just a little bit bigger and a different angle too, just so it looks a little more interesting and some non-symmetrical. That's kind of the whole idea of the organic look. Things don't align precisely. And the third extrusion. Okay, so we'll just maybe move it and then rotate it. It always takes a couple back and forth. That looks relatively square. Let's take a look at these. Looks like the middle finger is not as high as I wanted it to. So we'll just move it up. This is not the extrusion. It's just a basic move operation. All right, they got 2 fingers. How easy can it be? Let's go get the last finger, and we'll do the thumb. So we'll extrude this out. Maybe move it up a little bit more. Again, the rotate. and as many operations as you need. Just push, pull, push, pull. Over and over and over. One more extrusion. Or two more. Scale that in. As you do this more and more, you'll notice you start visualizing, even though it's kind of a rough, primitive box, but you'll visualize how it's going to look in the smooth form. We'll take a look at that just in a minute. Another thing I like to do is when objects, especially these faces terminate, you typically want to have them rotated so they're kind of level, right like so. And so I always like to look at this in the box form and then check it out in smooth form. Again, the key for switching between smooth and box mode is the tab key. Now, if you want to do a little bit of extra stuff, these fingers all come off in the kind of same general direction, straight. So wouldn't it be nice if we could have this finger kind of veer off just a little bit? And that's not too hard to do. So what I'm going to do is double click on this edge here. And by double clicking, you get a loop. Again, this is Control, Shift, and double click. Control, Shift, double click up there. So we've got two of those. Now to get the top one, it's on the end, so we can just pick the face. That's probably the easiest way to do it. And then just scoot those over. And then a little rotation. Slight rotation and another little scoot. So we just have them veering off a little bit, so that looks a little more organic and fun. All right, there's your basic hand. I am going to work on the thumb now. So I think we'll pull the thumb. We can do, this thumb is actually from two faces, and I think this thumb is from one. Let's match this one over here. So I'm going to double click this and just kind of pull it down. Double click. That gives us a loop of that edge. Pull it down. And I pick this one face, Control Shift picking, and I'm going to extrude it out. Maybe I'll rotate it a little bit and move it. How's that looking? I'm just checking this other one over here. Let's do another extrusion. This definitely needs to scale in, so I'm grabbing the green box there and pushing it. And once you push it, you'll know right away, it needs a little bit more of rotation. And so I think we have one more extrude. Keep them short. You can always make it longer. And let's see how that looks. Hey, not too bad. So there's a part of the thumb that is much thicker at the bottom. So we can just grab this one edge, Control Shift, and slide that down. There we go. That's looking way better. Now, this is also a good time to notice when things change direction. This goes here and then doubles back in and back out. So you may want to just move that out so it's kind of has more of a continuation. Notice that even though it's three straight lines, that's telling me it's going to curve more smoothly. Hit Tab. Fantastic. We might have the thumb bend just a little bit. It would look weird coming flat. So let's double click to get this. And then the face. Now, just in case you were wondering earlier, if I double click on this edge, it stops at 1 because it's a terminus. So I can double click a loop internally, but then typically when I get to the end, I just click the face. So that's the way to do it. Now we have the gumball kind of at a weird angle. So you may want to switch it back to the C-plane and just move that guy up a little bit. So I'm moving two things together, even though I just want to move the face now as the last step. And probably needs a little bit of a rotate. There we go. May want to pull that down just a little bit. All right, let's get to the cuff. I think that's enough work on that. You may want to splay that third finger out the same way we did the first finger. You may want to make the middle finger a little bit taller. So all these things are easy to do after it's built. That's the beauty of sub-Ds. There we go. So we're going to get the cuff now. So let's take a look here. So I'm checking this out here. It looks like we had 3 faces to make the cuff. So let's use this first face here. So I'm going to pick 3 faces. Just keep clicking. And this will be our transition. So this will be the slope. The next thing I extrude will be the center, and then we'll have another slope back down. So extrude out. And then one more short extrude. Now, there's a lot more work to be done here, but let's just take a look in the smooth mode. Yep, looks horrible. Another way to select multiple entities is we can loop faces. So I'm going to click on this face here, Control-Shift-Click, and then click the next one over, double-click, and look at that. We get a loop all the way around the object. That is pretty handy. So I'm going to scale those up, 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 and out, like so. And then kind of move them towards the center. This is the whole idea of making this little cuff. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, not so good. Let's take this part here. I'm going to move that back in a bit. Now it's looking a little bit more similar or symmetrical to the other side. But notice with sub Ds, they always want to be smooth. So every time I go over here, it's just blending, blending, blending. And if we look at the other one, there's a nice crease. And so that's the name of the command, how we can get a little more extra detail in this section here. So I'm double click. That's an internal loop, so it goes around. And then up here on sub Ds, we have hard crease, which is a right click. Now, it looks the same in box mode, but you may notice that it's a little bit darker. So let's hit the tab key, and there you go. That's a nice little crease there. So this part may want to, let's see. You can also grab a combination section. So I'm going to hold down Shift and drag a box around there. So I've got a whole bunch of stuff. I'm just going to scale that in a bit. Now it's scaled back away, so I can just push it back in. So that's another way to select stuff, is doing an overlapping box. What do you know? Okay, I think we're pretty close to being done. You might want to make the wrist a separate piece, or even put a crease here. So a couple of ways to go. If you want to have the wrist continue to be blended here, I think actually based on this cartoon, I would have a separate piece of geometry for the arm. That could just be a single curve and then do a pipe operation on that. Or in sub D terms, the multi-pipe. Okay, I'll do it. So with the multi-pipe, we're going to draw just a basic control point curve, which is the smooth guy right here. And I'm going to do it kind of on the side so I don't snap to anything. Okay, so there's your basic curve. Let's get that into position and move it down. That's on the ground plane or the grid, so I'm going to move it up to the center there. And this is a really good strategy to make things from separate objects. I'm going to maybe scale that down just a little bit and move it over. So it looks like it's entering the center where the wrist should be. Okay. So anytime you use curves with sub Ds, they need to be running through this special command called make sub D friendly. So let's go to the sub D tools, and that sub D friendly command is right there at the very end. So I'm going to left click. You'll see it change just a little bit. If it's closed, you'll see no change, but open curves will sometimes jump a little bit. So you can always go back in there and make a slight little tweak as needed, or leave it alone. Anyway, we're ready for the final step here, which is called the multi-pipe. And it's right here on the sub D sidebar. Now, the radius is way too small, and the struts, I like to lower those down. Those are the number of edges between each of the control points. So we can actually lower those down. 0 will add no more. Now the radius is way too small. Let's try 20. So we're getting closer now. 20, maybe 30. We'll leave it at that and right click. And so that's the beauty of drawing with curves. Just make them sub D friendly, but then you can use that multi-pipe command and play around with the settings. You didn't have to make any decisions until later. One last thing, I keep thinking of more things here. This needs a lot of extra tweaking. So one thing I'm seeing for sure is the hand maybe needs to come out. So we can just grab that there. There you go. That's looking way more hand-like. And maybe in the middle, we take these two curves, and I'm going to tighten them up just a little bit with a scale in. And and then just pull them down a little bit. That's all, just to give a little more of a variety. So there's a bit of a rounded part on the thumb and then another part of the other side of the hand. So there you go. We've made a cartoon dog hand with just a single primitive box and then a series of extrusions. So remember, this is all about repetition and playing with the forms until they're exactly right. So there's never going to be just the one exact linear process. It'll be a lot of back and forth and experimenting, but that's the beauty.